joined by my good friend Jeff MD, our in-house CIA operative 007. Has a huge fan base in England, by the way. We appreciate all y'all over there in England sending us fan emails for Jeff. I think it's like the James Bond type aura that you cast, right? I mean, they're obviously very proud of James Bond over there, as they should be, and you fill that role for them from an American perspective. It's fantastic. It's good stuff.
Good for them, though.
So it'll just be Jeff and I tonight, which is fine. We've got a really interesting topic to discuss, essentially truth in broadcasting, for lack of a better term. And it's something that there have been some movements in the past, legal movements in the past, that would have rectified this problem that we now find ourselves in. However, before we get too deep into the topic du jour, we're going to do the conflicted question because Mike Sterling couldn't join us tonight. He's spending the night with his wife, being a good husband. God bless him. So here's another new name, by the way, Jeff. So this deck that we're working off of right now for conflicted is called the New World series.
Okay.
And I'm unfamiliar with many of the characters in it, as I mentioned last night. So there's another new name tonight, Nelson. I'm not sure who Nelson is. Maybe somebody out there in the audience can tell us who that person is. And for those of you who aren't aware, just started following us at the beginning of Survival Dispatch News, we always pose a question from one of these conflicted the game decks, and then we answer it at the end of the panel. And we want to hear your answers as well in the comment section down below. So here we go with the conflicted question of the night. Nelson had survived several encounters with death, largely due to the group of people he belonged to. They were few in numbers, but loyal friends who were all well organized. Supplies were extremely low, but they were getting by while moving around with this. Sorry, golly, sometimes I'm telling you, they did it again. There's no period in the sentence. The context, I guess everybody has their own dialect of English, but the context for some of these questions is just out of whack. Great game, but sometimes the grammar could be a little bit better. So I'm going to start over again because I just put a period in there so it doesn't throw me off like that. Nelson had survived several encounters with death, largely due to the group of people he belonged to. They were few in number, but loyal friends who were well organized. Supplies were extremely low, but they were getting by. While moving around with his group, Nelson ran into an old fiance. She had someone with her, and both of them wanted to join Nelson's group. Nelson said this was a group decision. If you were in Nelson's group, would you be willing to add people who brought little to the table into your group? Why or why not? So we've had some other questions similar to this from Conflicted, but it's a good one, and it speaks to a combination of balancing what you have for resources against your morals and beliefs. So this video tonight is brought to you by Black Forest Supplements. This product here, NMN, is the only over-the-counter product I've taken since I started training in 1982 that I can actually feel a difference. I feel a difference from the energy level. Now, it's also marketed as an anti-aging drug. I can't speak to that. I'm not a professional there, but what I can tell you is that the FDA, on behalf of Big Pharma, is trying to turn this into a pharmaceutical product. That should tell you everything you need to know as far as its efficacy is concerned. And S2, who's not with us tonight, he's been taking it for 7 months. I've been taking it for 7 months. He's also noticed an improvement as far as brain fog and mental acuity is concerned. The other sponsor for tonight is Goldco. There's a link down below in the description. You get a free wealth kit from them. It's pretty interesting information. Even if you don't have a large portfolio of investments, there's some good guidance in there of how to get through tumultuous economic times. And I think it's safe to say that we're facing some tumultuous economic times on the horizon. Update wise, we'll have another live episode tomorrow night, same time as usual, 7 p.m. Eastern. And there will be a pre-recorded episode broadcast at 7 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday that we'll be recording tomorrow. And last piece of promotional housekeeping stuff at the beginning. If you go to patreon.com/survival dispatch, we have free memberships and paid memberships, $9.99 a month. Paid members get our essentials guide. That's a 228-page guide that if you had nothing else to get through SHTF, that guide would give you what you need to get through. That's included free when you're a paying member. You get 50% off all of our e-magazines. You get behind the scenes content, early access to content. You also get access to our new Signal group, so the Signal app. And if you're a paying member and you're watching, download and install Signal if you don't have it already. Send an email to support@survivaldispatch.com with your phone number, and I'll make sure that you get added to the group. So, with that being said, Jeff, I've got a video that I want to kick us off with here that really speaks to the thumbnail that we had today. And which, by the way, I did not come up with the term mockingbird media. I think it's brilliant, though. The Q shaman guy, Jacob Chansley, is the guy who coined the term mockingbird media. And this video really does his description justice. It's a couple minutes long, but it's well worth the watch. So here we go.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
we are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
We are concerned about troubling, irresponsible, one-sided news stories
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Wow. So in case you didn't get the memo there, Jeff, this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Yeah, what's funny and frightening about this at the same time is if it was all ABC, okay, fine. They're all on the same talking point.
1 second here. One of my other feeds is going crazy here. There we go. One of these days, we're going to have somebody behind the scenes actually operate as our producer, so I don't have to keep track of. I've got 6 web browsers open over here. I've got 3 web browsers open over here, each with a dozen tabs open.
I need to teach Bailey how to do it.
I need to teach somebody how to do it. That's for sure. It would be very helpful. The problem is that some of these platforms, as you know, if you leave the platform with the volume turned off, you come back, the volume stays turned off. But other ones like LinkedIn, for example, is really bad. Every time you load it, it's going to roll again. So with that minor technical detail out of the way, I want to cover some background, Jeff, and feel free to stop me so that we can discuss it. But I think we would agree that one of the biggest problems that we face in America is this just sprawling federal government and agencies, and then state and city underneath that. I didn't have this picture over on my laptop. Let me see if I can find it quickly. I was discussing this with Todd Callender earlier today, but this is what the education system looks like now. So the lines across the bottom are the number of students, and that crazy line taken off across the top is the amount of bureaucrats that we've added to the mix. And how much money we spent. And it's kind of indicative of all of our federal agencies, right? We're spending more than we ever have before, but the quality of services has nosedived. So I would say the beginning of this, as far as the broadcasting industry is concerned, there was a bill in 1927, and I don't think it was overly, influential in what was going on at the time, but FDR in 1934 passed the Communications Act, and that was the beginning of the FCC. So the beginning of another alphabet agency, right? So we're at 90 years now since that was introduced. That was part of FDR's New Deal, which of course was all about spend more money on government related stuff. And that we could do a whole separate episode on how, the FDR's New Deal didn't save us from the Great Depression. World War II saved us from the Great Depression when we flipped our industrial capacity. Yeah. You hear some people, liberals, say, oh, well, FDR's New Deal. FDR's New Deal was a massive flop until we converted all of our industrial capacity to the war effort. And that's what blew the economy out, right?
And borrowed billions to buy all the tanks and airplanes and crap.
Exactly. So long story short is even the Communications Act, though, 1934, it established the FCC. It wasn't overly complex. Really, the goal was to facilitate supposedly better communication in the radio industry. And of course, this is before many other forms of communication that we've got today. So fast forward to 1987, and there was a bill that got signed by both branches of Congress called the Fairness in Broadcasting Act. And it was an amendment to the 1934 Act that required anybody who had a broadcast license to essentially offer both sides of the story. And I'm not sure why, but Ronald Reagan vetoed it. And if I had to guess, it was probably like you and I were discussing, Jeff, there was probably some other thing tacked onto this bill that had nothing to do with broadcasting, right?
Poison pill.
Yeah, something along those lines. But essentially, from what I've read of that Fairness in Broadcasting Act, the biggest piece that would have been a benefit was that media couldn't be slanted one way or the other. They really had to provide a more, I would say, honest report. Somebody said something along the lines of that was when our broadcast media informed people instead of trying to brainwash people,
right,
which I thought was a good way of stating it. So this next one, though, because we're looking at these milestone events, is the Truth in Broadcasting Act of 2005, which died in committee. And I don't recognize the name of the sponsor, Frank Lautenberg, but listen to these co-sponsors: John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, Ed Kennedy, Byron Dorgan, Barbara Boxer, Mark Dayton. You've got some pretty heavy hitters in there, right?
Lautenberg was a big hitter. I want to say he was a senator from Connecticut, but he was a big time power broker back in the day.
Well, what's crazy is, so 19 years ago, I'm going to go through what this bill did, and it's too bad that it died in committee, but this would be like the antithesis of what the liberals want today. So I'm just going to read off of this, and then we can kind of discuss on how that would have a beneficial effect today. So the purpose of Senate Bill 967 is to amend the Communications Act of 1934 to ensure that federal government produced prepackaged news stories contain announcements that inform viewers that the information within was provided by the United States government. The bill will require federal agencies to provide, within the text or audio of any prepackaged news story prepared or produced by the federal agency and intended for broadcast or video distribution in the United States, clear notice that such story was produced by the federal government. The act will force networks to disclose the source of each prepackaged news story. I mean, can you see any liberal going for that today? You're on mute, Jeff.
It's almost like the government. It's, I don't know if you want to call it pro-propaganda or anti-propaganda, but if you're going to put something out and you say, we got this from the government, okay, fine. But yeah, they'd never do that now. But the problem with laws like this, in my opinion, is, okay, you're going to have somebody who monitors and keeps track of it and then dings people when they don't do it. So you've got a gatekeeper. And if you're the gatekeeper, you can do whatever you want because you choose who you're going to ding and who you're not going to ding. And you may say, we're going to go after, Fox News, but we're not going to go after MSNBC. I don't. It's sort of like having fact checkers on stuff. It's like, who's fact checking the fact checkers?
Yeah.
There's no objective measure of what's. I mean, Kamala HQ lies with damn near every tweet, but you never see a fact check.
Yeah, 100%. So let's just imagine for a second that there was a mechanism that fairly decided on that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, what I found was interesting with the Truth in Broadcasting Act from 2005 is there should be no question when a federal agency has provided a story. So I don't see that as being as contentious on, is it true or not? Either that agency, wrote this story and gave it to the press, or they didn't. And I think that would be a little bit easier to enforce than what you're describing. And what you're describing is important.
But the story the government provides, who's to say it's true?
100%.
They say, we got this from the Department of State. Okay, you got it from the Department of State. It can still be complete and total bullshit.
Could be.
We got this from the DOD, where they say no soldiers were injured during this training exercise. Okay, that's what they said. Well, then 6 months later, 4 died and 19 went to the hospital, because nobody likes to admit their mistakes. And so, I mean, how many times have we seen the FBI go, we have no information to either confirm or deny the allegations presented? It's all bullshit.
Yeah, I would say that the first step, though, is recognizing that there's a problem. So if, for example, just like anything else, follow the money, right? So if the FDA is putting something out there saying, oh, this is far too dangerous to be over the counter, this needs to be big pharma only, and they put a story out to that effect, at least we would know that it's somebody who has skin in the game, right? Because
it just basically means it's official government propaganda as opposed to somebody else's propaganda.
So don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure the last time I looked at the FDA, that 80% of their budget comes from private sources like Big Pharma. Yeah. And even if that's not 100% the accurate number, it's directionally correct.
It's close, because what the Big Pharma does is they have a drug and it's got to be approved by the FDA. It's supposed to be tested and all this. Well, who pays for the testing? We're not paying. They charge the pharmaceutical company. So if you're the FDA and you get 80% of your budget from Pfizer in the group, and are you really going to shoot down their drugs? No, because that's your budget, which means that's your paycheck.
Exactly. As per usual, follow the money, and that will usually reveal the truth.
Doing more drugs all the time, so they have to use your services so you can send little Johnny to college.
So suffice it to say that the Truth in Broadcasting Act 2005 that died in committee, while it's not a panacea, it would have made things better at least. So there'd be a disclaimer on everything required by mainstream media to say, oh, by the way, this story was handed to us by the NIH. I kind of think a couple of years ago, we had this big government event going on, and there was a lot of information from the NIH and the CDC that wasn't initially presented that way. You may have heard of it. I mean, we shall leave it as let's call it the government screw up that shall not be named, because we're suppressed enough as it is.
Screw-ups.
Yeah, we're suppressed enough as it is. So with that being said, I don't know that act would have survived what Obama's minions did to the Smith-Mundt Act in 2013. So for over 60 years, the Smith-Mundt Act prohibited our federal government from disseminating government-produced programming or propaganda to domestic audiences here in the United States. And when Obama essentially made that change to that act, or his minions made that change, I should say, the propaganda has gone absolutely crazy. So the federal government can not only generate propaganda, and feed the propaganda to their mouthpieces in mainstream media. And let's be clear, it doesn't matter if it's Fox News, MSNBC, or anybody in between. They're all bad guys, right? They're all reporting. I used to say the best case scenario for mainstream media was they were infotainment. Worst case scenario, they were propagandatainment. I don't say that anymore. It's straight up propaganda.
Yeah.
There is no infotainment piece left, right?
Yeah, that intro where all those people are saying the same thing over and over again. And what I was saying about that is what's funny and scary about that is that's ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, Fox News. That's every network, and they're all saying the exact same thing. Now, it's one thing when you have Democrat politicians all use the same talking points and all use the same, little catchphrases. That's okay. That's fine. They got the memo from the DNC. I get that, and the Republicans can do the same thing. But these are supposed to be objective news organizations. And when the first time I remember seeing it is when George W. Bush got elected or was running for president before he got elected, and they were saying he doesn't have the gravitas. Every frickin' network, every TV station in this country was on the whole gravitas. And it's like, okay, that's a Latin word that most people don't use every day. So how did it become every other word on the nightly news? Because they were ordered to say it.
Yeah, it was fed to them, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at the Smith-Mundt Act being gutted, what it essentially did was allow the federal government and the federal government's agencies to covertly influence public opinion.
Yeah.
So, and if you want to add something on top of that, if you go back to the early 1980s, there were somewhere around 500 independent news organizations in the country, give or take, right? Today, something like 96% of the mainstream media is owned by a handful of companies, right? Like these conglomerates. And so they're all in cahoots together. So they take their marching orders. I mean, let's be honest, our government is under the control of our enemies. So those groups, whether they be George Soros, the Rothschilds, Klaus Schwab, WEF, whatever, they give their instructions to their puppets like Obama. Obama, in turn, gives the instructions to his surrogates and minions. And at the same time, that information is passed on to the mainstream media outlets. And the whole thing, it's all done in concert. It's theater. It's not, there's nothing legit about it whatsoever. But the problem is that there's a lot of people, and we have people in our family, Jeff, and I'm sure you do as well. They grew up believing that they could trust the government, they could trust the mainstream media, and that is just not the case today.
Well, there was a time you probably could. I mean, back in the 60s and 70s, and I was reading something just this morning, and it was talking about the distrust of the media nowadays. Is that like when Walter Cronkite was delivering the news, and Chet, Huntley and Brinkley and those guys, 70%, over 70% of the American population had a high level of trust in the media. Well, in the last 10 or 15 years, they went from objective journalism to advocacy journalism, where they take a stand and they present a position, and they even say, yes, we shouldn't be objective in the news. We need to take into account the reporter's life experiences and culture. And I'm like, why do I give a shit about the reporter's life experiences or culture? I just want the news, and I want it accurate. Yeah. Since then, the news has gone downhill. Washington Post has lost half of its subscribers. The trust in media is now in the 20s when it used to be in the 70s. And something like 53% of the people say that their primary news source is social media. And so the old media are dying, and it's killing them. So that's why they're going against Elon, because who's the biggest social media platform? The one that people engage with the most is Twitter or X. So they've got to drag him down. And, and they had Zuckerberg was in their hip pocket, but now he's even making noises about, I'm not so sure about all this stuff. But if, they're attacking their competition, that's no different than Ford saying Chevy trucks suck. Right. It's their bottom line.
Yeah. So everything essentially up until this point in this video tonight is intended to just lay the groundwork. This is how we got to where we are today. We've got the powers that be, the globalists, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, marching orders to their minions. And that in turn, we get programmed with it, or we're supposed to be programmed with it by mainstream media. And I've got quite a few links pulled up here. For those of you who are paying insider members over on Patreon, this brief is over there, so you can click on the links and go view any of this stuff that you want. So there's some really good articles out there, and I'm not going to read off the articles. Nobody needs to hear me read this stuff off, but the headlines are quite telling. So this particular headline says a lot. A century of mainstream media lies. As technologies advance, so have weapons of mass deception. And this is a really good article. It's long. Whoever the author was, this James Perloff, really did his homework. And I'm scrolling down like this because there's some videos towards the end of this. And this starts at World War II propaganda film, Our Enemy, the Japanese, and moves on from there into some more modern stuff. I haven't actually watched the one on Japan. Let's have a quick look at it. As you can see, I watched the ones down below, but let's see what they had to say in World War II as far as this propaganda is concerned.
You are about to see the second of 3 films which have been made to help us size up our enemy, Japan. To beat the Japanese and to do the job thoroughly, we have got to understand them thoroughly. The Japanese are not easy to know. I've lived among them for 10 years. And I can testify that they are as different from ourselves as any people on this planet. The real difference is in their minds. You cannot measure Japanese sense of logic by any Western yardstick. Their weapons are modern. Their thinking 2,000 years out of date.
So I'm not sure where that video goes. I haven't watched the whole video, but it is kind of funny that their thinking is 2,000 years out of date. I don't know that I would say that's an accurate statement, but maybe not the best example of propaganda from World War II. Suffice it to say, go ahead, Jeff.
The purpose of that was you're taking Christian peaceful farm boys from the United States who've been taught their whole life, thou shalt not kill, and trying to say, you got to go kill these guys now.
There you go.
So what you do is you have to dehumanize them. So you're not thinking like I'm killing Billy from down the street. I'm killing this little yellow devil who, who's going to eat my liver if he captures me, kind of stuff. And the Japanese did the same thing too. They told their population that the Americans are going to rape, murder, and behead all of you. So, but you might as well just commit suicide instead if you rather than be captured. Yeah,
okay.
That's what countries do during war.
A great explanation, Jeff. I appreciate that. You definitely did a better job of summarizing it than me. But I remember this next one happening. So this is a CNN split screen interview where they're supposedly having this conversation over satellite, and they're in the same parking lot.
Pacman Show at davidpacman.com. Welcome back to the show. Welcome to everybody from the We Survive Bush, You'll Survive Obama Facebook page who's watching today, as well as everybody from the I Love It When I Wake Up in the Morning and Barack Obama is President page. This is really a weird thing. Nancy Grace and Ashley Banfield from CNN were doing like a split screen interview. You know, these interviews where it's like one person's in one location, one person's in the other. and they were talking about crime stories, including the story about the Cleveland kidnapping and the whole story with Charles Ramsey, the witness, etc. And as people looked more closely at it, they noticed that they both were in Phoenix. And then as people looked even more closely, they realized that they were in the same parking lot, probably just a few feet away from each other. This is very, very weird. Let me show you a couple of images here. If you'll look at this one, and Natan, maybe you can pick this up. You see this red SUV drive behind Ashley Banfield and then immediately behind Nancy Grace. And it's abundantly clear that they're sitting in the same parking lot doing.
Oh,
the guy walking in the background is the same guy too.
Yeah, that's funny.
Well, that's
that reminds
me. Who say, I'm here at the hurricane, and they're sitting there, trying to pretend to push back against the wind, and some dude's walking his dog behind him.
Yeah, well, there's that one of Anderson Cooper, supposedly in water up to here during a hurricane. And you see people walking around and the water's like knee deep or whatever. And he was kneeled down in it to make it look like it was deeper. I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny because they're promoting straight up bullshit as being the truth. And it's just not.
They're just liars.
It is all fabricated lies. Absolutely. So this next one that I've got here doesn't have videos with it, but it's got 35 things, these lies here, right? And I won't read through all of them, but some of them really caught my eye, especially President Obama. If you like your doctor, you can go to your doctor. We clearly know that was a big lie. I'm not going to say the CDC one because that'll probably get our video nuked on some of the platforms. NSA, we aren't spying on phone calls or emails of U.S. citizens. I can tell you that the NSA in particular bought billions of dollars of equipment from Sun Microsystems to build out the first phase of what was called Project Echelon, which was capturing every single data packet going out of the United States across the Pacific and coming back in again.
Is that the one they built in Utah?
No, it started in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. They
it was the first
data center in Utah that used probably as much power as Vermont.
Yeah, it was. So Project Echelon was like their first stab at spying on Americans' internet traffic and essentially storing it and then trying to parse it. So the demand's huge, right? From a compute perspective and storage perspective, absolutely massive. And our equipment back then at Sun was, it still is this day, it's the highest end stuff that you can buy out there. I mean, you're talking systems that are size of refrigerators that are $20 million and crunch numbers for human genome research, that kind of stuff. But let's go down the list for a couple more interesting ones here. The U.S. Navy, no sailors were harmed by Fukushima radiation. All right. American Diabetes Association, diabetes cannot be reversed. It can only be managed with expensive medication. Of course, that's straight up bullshit. Government run schools, Common Core provides your child with a quality, historically accurate education. So that's why we've gone from number one in the world from when the Department of Education was formed to what are we now for math? 24, 25?
25th,
Yeah.
23rd. Yeah. Way down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 11, the FCC. I remember when they said this, we don't really want to control the internet. We just want to regulate it just a little. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Big Pharma, who we've mentioned time and again, are the biggest lobbying entity in Washington, D.C. We don't need to charge you exorbitant prices for drugs for our own profits. We only need the money to bring you more amazing breakthroughs. Okay. So that's why when Donald Trump came into office the first time, EpiPens were many hundreds of dollars, $400 or $500, something like that. He got the price down, if memory serves me right, $75, $80. Of course, as soon as the Biden admin got installed, they cranked the price up to $700 for EpiPens. But no, Big Pharma is not trying to rip you off in any way whatsoever. We're going to skip number 13 because that's a topic that will get us in trouble with the big tech overlords. Let's see what else is really good out of this. The Federal Reserve printing more fiat currency is good for the economy, and inflated stock market valuations prove it until the one day that they don't. All right. Let's see what else is really good in here. Oh, Monsanto, our friends at Monsanto. Glyphosate is perfectly safe for human consumption zero negative impacts on the environment. Did you know that, Jeff?
Yeah, I knew. I put it on my cereal in the morning instead of milk.
Well done, by the way. Big Pharma loves you. Or Big Chemicals, I guess, love you. British Petroleum, BP. We completely cleaned up the Gulf of Mexico. Dolphins? No dolphins. Yeah, there was no dolphins harmed in this oil rig that blew up. The FDA, psychiatric drugging of children helps children become healthier. And we just had this discussion with Eric Meter from Privacy Academy.
And transgender.
Well, yes, of course. We'll be careful not to go too deep down that rabbit hole, or we'll get messed up too. Last night, S2 mentioned a word that I shall not mention because I told him if you even say the word, it doesn't matter what the contact text is, they'll wreck this video. And he knows better now, but he mentioned that word, and 2 minutes after the video was done, YouTube instantly flagged the video from last night, and it was over one word that shall not be named.
It's the Harry Potter word.
The Harry Potter word, sure. Okay. So let me see what else do we have here. Yeah. Everything is so screwed up by big government that the only answer is bigger government. That's a great one.
Yeah, we painted your house and it peeled off. So the only thing we can do is have you pay us to paint it again with the same paint.
There you go. I like 2526, right? 25, your local TV news station. Children's vitamins are very dangerous. The same TV news station, but mercury in the vaccines is safe. I shouldn't have said that word with the V, by the way.
Yeah.
Hopefully it does. We don't get slapped down for that one. It's so you have to be so careful on the non-free speech platforms. Rumble, Cloud Hub X, of course, we don't have that problem like we do in the other ones, but we're trying to get the word out to a bigger audience. Let's see, what else do we have here? Well, number 31, the number of unemployed Americans is falling just like we promised. See, these numbers prove it. Well, what that reminds me of is the debacle a few months ago where the number of jobs created was over-reported by 800,000. And we'll speak to that. Let's stop there and discuss that a little bit. So more so the Democrats than the Republicans, but keeping in mind they're just two different sides of the same coin. They're all part of the same, uniparty. But the Democrats in particular love to do whatever it takes to get a headline that their minions will memorize and regurgitate. And then it doesn't matter if it gets disproven or overturned. They got their headline, right? So technically, you are not a felon until you've been sentenced. But all they wanted out of all this lawfare against Donald Trump was to say that he was a convicted felon. And Alex Soros promoted that. And of course, it was the Mockingbird media all in unison rolling with that. I think we discussed it last night, actually, when you weren't on, Jeff. But when Christopher Wray went in front of Congress and said Donald Trump was not shot, that was either pieces of the teleprompter or the handrail. Of course, the teleprompter is perfectly intact. 48 hours later, the FBI releases a letter saying Christopher Wray spoke out of turn and Donald Trump was actually shot. But they got their headline, and they got their headline in the Washington Post, who you mentioned, and all these other rags that, reiterated over and over. Donald Trump wasn't shot. He didn't take a bullet. And they don't care that it's disproven because all they got to do is get it planted once for people to memorize, regurgitate.
The media has done this as long as there's been media. Newspapers were notorious for printing a bullshit story on the front page above the fold, and then when it turns out to be wrong, they put in we corrected it, and the correction is on section D, page 27, next to the want ads at the bottom, and say, "Oops, we made a mistake." Now they don't even do that. They just do what they call the stealth edits of the online version. They'll post a story, Donald Trump, killed a dolphin with a shotgun. And then they'll just say Donald Trump shot Skeet with a shotgun. And they'll just say, "What dolphin? We never said dolphin." But thank God for the Wayback Machine. So you can go, "Yeah, you idiots, you did say it." And then you edited it later rather than issue a retraction.
Yeah, well, and even like you said, when they do issue a retraction, it's a footnote. It's not in your face, and people, again, they've got their headline. That's all they're after, right?
And
So
some of this shameless stuff, they never even retract ever. Walter Duranty was a New York Times reporter who was in Moscow in the 1930s. And that's when they basically induced a famine in Ukraine that killed like 3 million people. He knew it was going on, but he was a mouthpiece for the Soviets and for Stalin. And he lied about it for years. And then and he got, Pulitzer Prizes and all this stuff. And then after the war, when it came out that they'd killed 3 million of their own people, they were like, what stories? No, what? Well, he just didn't know. Yeah, he did know. But he actively quashed it at the request of the Soviets. But they've never apologized for that.
right. And I'm not sure where I read this. I like to give credit to people when they come up with something, but somewhere along the way, as I was researching our brief for this, I read somewhere somebody made a comment that said somewhere along the line, the news media went from being a public service to a for-profit business at all costs, no matter what it takes. And I thought that was an interesting comment because, per usual, and I've been saying this for years, follow the money. If you follow the money, you'll figure out what the heck is going on. So there was another really good article. And again, I'm not going to read these articles. We've got all of the links over on our Patreon. Go on over there, grab the PDF, and you can see it. But this article by the New Yorker, I read most of it, and I put it up here not because, again, that I want to read it, but it goes through all of the history, some of which we've already discussed, on how it got to the point where Americans just no longer trust the media. And what did you say the number was that is for Americans now, as far as people believing in mainstream media?
23%, I think, that have a great deal of trust in the media. And you're right. A lot of it's money, because in the old days, when there were only 3 networks, they looked at their news operations as kind of it was their go-to thing. They were proud of it. They lost money on those operations, but it was a trophy that if you had a great news program and you had news bureaus all over the world, all over the country, and when you had the Walter Cronkites out there, they really paid attention to it. And like I said, they were willing to lose money on it every year because it was the shiny trophy on the case. Well, now you had, CNN came along. First thing it killed them, 24-hour news. So now they're like, crap, we can't just wait till tomorrow to air this. We got to air it right now. And that's where mistakes get made. But then they were losing revenue on their broadcast because there's a shit ton of competition now with Netflix and Amazon Prime and all these cable TV shows. So their revenue's going down, their competition is going up, and so their quality went down. And then on top of that, you get these advocacy journalists. It's a perfect storm. They're total crap.
It is a couple interesting comments, and because it's only the 2 of us tonight, it's a little bit harder to stay on top of the comments. But this is a good one. Tucked by V. Front page false claims, page 7 retractions. That's pretty accurate. There's another question here by Stray Kitten. Wasn't the Wayback Machine hacked? It was hacked. I do not know if it's still down, but thank you for raising that. Good point, because that has the ability to show that people are just not telling the truth. And then there was another one in here right there from Roy. If you would have an interest in reading Lifting the Veil for background info, I can put a link. By all means, Roy, put that in the comment section down below, and we'll catch that for sure. And we really appreciate any type of additional insight that you guys can provide as well. I think probably one of the things that's a little bit different with call it podcasts, entities like Survival Dispatch News, there's a closer bi-directional relationship with the audience than what you would see with the mainstream media, right? I mean, we interact with our followers. It could be email, could be on Patreon, could be in our new Signal group, could be in the chat here. I actually think that the reason that we've seen a transition, at least on the major platforms, YouTube, Rumble, etc., for long form videos going from pre-recorded to lives is because of this interaction that we get with the chat. In other words, somebody can come on here, they can watch this episode live. I'm looking at my monitor over here. It's on a half a dozen different platforms. People can comment in real time. We can reply in real time, as opposed to them leaving a comment in the comment section. And then we come along and we reply a day or two later, and then that person comes back. This is in real time. And I think that's what appeals to a lot of people, not just for SDN, but for people in general. So moving on from there, this is kind of ironic, if you ask me, but here is CBC, so the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which is government funded. This is a government mouthpiece in Canada, telling us how the U.S. media lost the trust of the public, right? And I mean, they're nothing more than a mouthpiece themselves. If you followed any of the trucker protests that were going on in Ottawa, a few years ago, the CBC was amongst the worst ones supporting, I call him Justin Trudeau instead of Trudeau. He's a turd. So it's just, I find it a lot of irony that their government funded mouthpiece would point out how we've lost trust in our American mainstream media. I'm not saying they're wrong, but you can't trust anything that the CBC publishes either. So this is like some kind of crazy vicious circle going on here with them adding that. Have you followed it?
It's like Joseph Goebbels saying, wow, you guys are kind of extreme on this propaganda stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But have you followed any of the stuff over the years with the CBC? I mean, they're amongst the worst.
They used to be an okay platform, 15, 20 years ago. And, the BBC was the same way. They were always liberal slant. But now they've just gone off the frickin' deep end. You kill a terrorist and they go, oh, he was a fine motivational speaker and he was well respected. It's like he murdered women and children, for Christ's sakes. But, because, he's Palestinian, so we have to say he's great. And CBC is kind of the same way.
Exactly. And it's interesting that you would bring up Palestinian, because I was going to make a comment to that. At the end of the day, you have Hamas being assisted by the Iranians, killing 1,400 people, Israelis, in one day, kidnapping a bunch of people, raping, mutilating, and murdering them. You know what? I've been saying this forever. The Israelis, the Jews, and the Arabs have been fighting since Christ was a cowboy, and I don't give a shit. They keep that crap over there in your part of the world. We don't need that bullshit here. And if y'all want to kill each other, then go ahead and fucking kill each other. But with that being said, if let's say that we had 10,000 employees at Survival Dispatch, okay, just for a bullshit number, and somebody murdered 1,000 of my employees in one day at a company picnic that we held, I would go on the rampage and hunt every last one of those motherfuckers down and kill them. So to suggest that the Jews don't have a right to defend themselves, they absolutely have a right to defend themselves, but we should be staying out of it. It's all I'm saying. We're giving the Israelis our technology and our weapons, making tons of money off it, and then we're sending aid to the Palestinians. How does that make sense?
That's asinine. I mean, if you look at what happened to the Israelis, look at what we did after 9/11. 3,000 Americans, a little over 3,000 Americans killed. We started a war that lasted 20 years. If, as a percentage of their population, what happened on October 7th in Israel would have been the equivalent of over 30,000 Americans being killed on September 11th. Because there are actually more than that, I think, because they're like 1/30th our size, and so it's would I go medieval on their ass? Absolutely.
Yeah,
I have sympathy for Palestinian little kids. And that's about it, because the Hamas got voted in. Now, they got rid of all elections after that, but somebody voted for those assholes. It's just like Hitler didn't take over in a coup. He was elected. So the German people, and my family's German, but the German people, it's like, you know what? You got a little bit of blood on your hands there, guys. Don't get all high and mighty.
My buddy Velcro there, long range sniper dude, pointed out that we had a spammer in the Rumble chat, so he's dealt with. Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, cool.
So anyway, I don't want to go too deep into this Israel-Palestinian thing, but it's not our fight, number one, and I want less than nothing to do with these fights that have been going on forever and ever. And I will always say that somebody who's attacked has the right to defend themselves and go on the attack. And you're right. These young kids didn't ask for any of this shit, but the parents who quietly have supported terrorist organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the list goes on.
Yeah.
These are, so the people who support those groups, and you would know this better than anybody, have a reputation for smiling to your face while they stab you in the back.
No, absolutely.
Fuck every last one of them. If you want to kill 1,400 people, right? If you want to kill 1,400 people and rape and mutilate them, and those people come back and unleash holy hell on you, you made your bed. You can sleep in it, but don't drag us into it. Is what it boils down
story. I was in Afghanistan. It was in 2002, and we had a bunch of Pakistani Al Qaeda guys locked up in prisons in Sherbagan, which is a town in the northern part of the country. And the FBI came through to fingerprint all these mopes and collect DNA and stuff, so that if they ever showed up at our doorsteps, we could say, "Wait a minute, you're a terrorist." And these guys, they all claim the same thing. I was just a humble truck driver. I was just delivering goods up here, food for the hungry, when the war started, and I got wrapped up. I'm an innocent man. I'm not a bad person. Please let me go. And then the FBI guys would say, "Okay, well, if we let you go today, what are you going to do? Go kill Americans." And they would say that. And, it's like, okay, then why in the hell would we ever let you go? Because you've just told me first thing you're going to do is go kill more Americans. So, screw you, rot in jail, get tuberculosis and die. I don't care.
Yeah.
No sympathy for those kids.
No, it's impossible to have sympathy for those types of people. So let's pivot a little bit here, because again, the purpose of this episode is to put a really fine point on how our mainstream media has just become a branch of the government, the cabal, whatever you want to call them. It's just a mouthpiece. It's all frickin' propaganda. Well, a great example of that would be the New York Post breaking the story on Hunter Biden's laptop, and instantly Jack Dorsey and Twitter suspended their account for spreading bullshit. So, I mean, I've got a bunch of articles pulled up here. Some of them are on the New York Post, some of them are otherwise, but we're going to go through these together.
Don't forget, Facebook did it, and Google, if you tried to search for the story, they'd give you no results. It was a conspiracy.
Yep. So, I mean, this first article, and again, if you're a Survival Dispatch insider, patreon.com/Survival Dispatch, we publish all of our briefs over there for our members, and all of these links are in there. But essentially, here we are 4 years later, I guess, and the FBI has admitted in court that the laptop was real. Well, no shit, Sherlock. You know what I mean? Like, here's a question for you before we dive into. I've got, I think, 4 or 5 news articles pulled up on this. How is it, Jeff? I mean, legit question. This is not a rhetorical question. I want to hear your thoughts. How is it that many of us can see through this bullshit with barely expending any brain power to see that this is absolute bullshit? And we've got a contingent of our society that can't see through bullshit. If you rubbed it in their face, they couldn't tell you that it was bullshit. How is that? Is this just a straight up IQ differential, or what is it?
Well, there's probably some of that, but I think a lot of it is people, especially lazy people, they establish a worldview and they're unwilling to change it. And when that happens, they will look for any reinforcement of their opinions. They will find any little statistic, they will take any story and latch onto it. And even when the story turns out to be false, like the Hunter Biden laptop story, they still refuse to let go because they can't face the prospect that their worldview isn't what they think it is. they just can't move on, and they're unwilling to be critical thinkers about it. And there's people on both sides like that, but I really think it's an attribute for lazy people. They are too lazy. Okay, they've been fed something, they've agreed to it. Okay, great, we'll check it off. And then, like they may say, Fords are the best trucks in the world. Okay, I'm a Ford guy. But then someone comes up and says, well, here's this new truck, and it's 10 times better. I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to look at it because I'm a Ford guy. There are Democrats who they ignored all the stuff that the Bidens have been doing. Why? Because he's a Democrat and they're Democrats. But they'll take any lie that you say about Trump or any other Republican and swear to God it was delivered to them like the 10 Commandments to Moses from God. And they just they cannot move away from it because it undermines their worldview. And they don't have anything to back it to fall back on.
That's a very eloquent and a good description on your part, Jeff. I think I've mentioned this short story before, but it's really, really short. I bought a Jeep about 15 years ago in New Smyrna Beach. And the guy who owns a small used car lot in New Smyrna, his name's Chris Garrett. And so I'm signing the papers on this Jeep. And there's a picture on the wall of him and another older gentleman, both with brand new matching Harley Davidson street glides. And I looked up at it and I said, is that your father by chance? And he said, yeah, that's my father. And I don't know why he responded the way that he did, but I'm glad he did. He said, that man there taught me the most important lesson of my life. And that is, if you tell the truth, it'll never get worse. And I got to tell you, Chris Garrett is the most honest person in used car sales that I have ever met. Like that particular Jeep, somebody had stolen parts from a Cherokee and put them into this YJ Jeep and didn't match. Everything was off in the alignment. Like you couldn't correct the toe in, toe out, the camber, nothing, right? And he replaced it all at no charge, because I went to a 4x4 shop up this way and they said, yeah, those parts, those aren't even YJ parts. They took those off a Grand Cherokee, and he made the whole thing right. And it was pretty good experience. So we've bought a few vehicles from him over the years. So I think of it in terms of this discussion. So for example, if you want to make the Hunter Biden laptop story go away as fast as possible, say, yep, that's the truth. That's exactly what happened. You know what? It'll die in no time. Nobody else is going to hang on to it and run with it for years like we are now, 4 years later. Go ahead, Joe.
It'd been old news. And I think a lot of it is people are not skeptical. If you call someone a skeptic, it's like most people think it's an insult. It's a badge of honor to me, man. You should be skeptical about everything. If someone says, yeah, it's raining right now, well, you might want to glance out the window just to check, because it's not going to hurt anything to look out the window. But if they're wrong, okay, I don't need to grab an umbrella. So you should question everything. And all you're going to do is either you're going to say, okay, that source of information was accurate. Maybe I can trust it in the future. Or that source of information was whacked out. I'm not going to listen to those guys again. And it's like, I'm a climate skeptic. And people, oh, you're a climate denier. No, I'm a climate skeptic. Because when you make bold predictions for 30 years and absolutely none of them come true,
right?
I'm not going to believe your next one. But that doesn't make me a climate denier. That just makes you someone I can't trust, and I'm not going to. That's my whole thing. It's just like with the the V's, when they say, oh, if you take it, you'll never get sick. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I took it and I still got sick. Okay. So, I didn't make up being sick, but you obviously made up what you said. You may have believed it at the time, but in the short, you were wrong. So I'm not listening to you anymore because you haven't even admitted you were wrong.
HTG wins comment of the day, bar none. If a CIA guy is telling you to be skeptical, you should be skeptical. Amen to that. And I don't want to jump too far ahead, but you know, we have a list.
Are rarely surprised, and even fewer times disappointed.
There you go. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but one of the items at the end of the brief tonight's show, as far as actionable things that people can do in light of being lied to by big tech and big media, is to be skeptical of everything until you know, have a chance to look into it properly before you start spouting off all these lies. So let me pull up a couple more articles here, because we're at the point now where there's no ifs, ands, or buts that Hunter Biden's laptop story was 100% legit, 100% shouldn't have been dismissed, 100% had an effect on a number of people who voted for shithead Joe Biden, and that only helped them steal the election, because if they hadn't have believed all that crap, even though they cheated their ass off, it might not have got him all of the electoral college votes that he didn't deserve. But what's funny is this lady right here from NPR basically says that it was a great disservice for the mainstream media to discount Hunter Biden's laptop, but we did the right thing at NPR. We're innocent over at NPR, which of course we know.
Although we said exactly the same thing they said, almost to the freaking word, because they all got the same talking points.
Exactly. So here we go. This is, you know, over a year later, and New York Times very quietly retracts their claim that the Hunter Biden laptop story is unsubstantiated, and the 51 intelligence, you know, idiots who signed that letter to say this is Russian disinformation. That's what I'm getting at, though.
How they're not idiots. They're liars. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Exactly. How in the fuck can any person with an IQ of even like as low as 90 not see something like 51 bullshit artists saying that this is not bullshit and actually believing that it's not bullshit? It just, that's what blows me away, is that people will,
I know some of those guys.
They will not only believe the bullshit, they'll say more, please. You know,
there's one who every time he posts on LinkedIn and I see it, I always go back and say, "Hey, Mark, have you apologized for lying to everybody about the Hunter Biden laptop yet?" Every time he posts something, I always comment on it, and I just repeat it. He's probably got me blocked now, but
probably
their reasoning for, again, follow the money. Okay, they're all like, "Oh, we're former. We don't have a dog in this hunt. We don't work for the government anymore." No, but you work for all the defense contractors and intel contractors that do. Believe me, they have a dog in the hunt, and it's money. So if someone went through and you cancel a contract for I don't know the XYZ contracting company, and 3 of those guys work for it, they're not going to get any money. So who are they going to support? Whoever is going to make sure their gravy train keeps rolling. And if Trump's going to come in and say, "I'm going to cut all these things, I'm going to fire all these guys," they're like, "Well, crap, then I won't have any money." So Trump bad. Yeah, bad for their portfolio.
Yeah. So here's another fool on CNN. You know, there's no collusion with the government over Hunter Biden. You know, big media, big tech. No, there's no collusion there at all. Now we know, no ifs, ands, or buts. 100% collusion. And we knew it at the time. It's just, again, I'm going to get off this point, but I'm just amazed that people can't see bullshit for being bullshit, sort of thing, right? I think I've been on this page for New York Times too long since I opened it, so we won't bother sharing that. Suffice it to say that I just wanted to use Hunter Biden's laptop as an example of the government working with big media to bullshit Americans, and Americans gobbling it up, and not being able to see it. So the next aspect of government bullshit and the media backing them up that I have in our notes is, well, actually, you know what? Let's let what's her name here speak to it for us, because this broad kills me.
Let me just step back for a minute and I guess deal with the questions that have come in about the debate. And honestly, this is something that the president has addressed himself multiple times since this past Thursday. And first of all, I want to say we understand the concerns. We get it. The president did not have a great night, as you all know, and many of you reached out during the debate. The president had a cold. He had a hoarse voice. You all heard it. That's why you reached out. But I will say this, and the president said this over the past couple of days, certainly right after the debate. He knows how to do the job. And he knows how to do the job, not because he says it, because his record proves it. Because for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, the president's record has been unprecedented. Let me just step back for a minute.
So she's so full of shit that it's not even funny.
I feel sorry for her, actually, because her job is, okay, you have to go out there and lie through your teeth every day about every issue.
Exactly. And I mean, so obviously people can see that now we're into the realm of Joe Biden's dementia. And we heard all of the mainstream media and all of the surrogates tell us for months, no, Joe Biden's sharp as a tack. There's nothing wrong with Joe Biden. So let's hear Kamala's, thoughts on Joe Biden.
The comments that were made by that prosecutor, gratuitous, inaccurate, and inappropriate. The way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated.
So what she's talking about is when the story broke over the prosecutor meeting with Joe Biden and determining that he didn't have enough brain power left to defend himself for these bad things that he'd done. But of course he could still be the president. I mean,
yeah.
Just because he's feeble-minded and he's got advanced dementia and can't defend himself doesn't mean he can't be, lead the most powerful military in the world. I mean, why would you suggest otherwise?
Yeah, and their whole thing, he was never diagnosed with dementia. Well, that means you need to actually have a cognitive test in front of a neurologist, which they never did. That's like saying, I have never been diagnosed as being a white heterosexual male. But I am, and everybody can tell by looking at me. Everybody knew he'd lost it, and that he has dementia or Alzheimer's, whatever he has. I suspect it's more dementia. And my father died of dementia. I see the signs, him just the outbursts, the anger, the confusion, the blank stares. The dude's got dementia. And what I liked about when Ari Fleischer was the spokesman under Bush a million years ago, for a press secretary, he was a breath of fresh air to me, because they would ask him a question and he would say, I don't know, but let me go look and I'll give you that answer tomorrow. And he would. They don't know everything that's going on in the government, obviously, but she pretends that she does, and she just goes, okay, it's going to be damaging to Biden, so let me lie about it. And that's all they do. The truth hurts, so you lie.
So I got a visitor here. He's
which one is that?
That's Buddy. He's
Buddy.
He missed his walk earlier, so he's a high energy dog. He's looking for his walk into the wilderness. Pretty much nailed this. I'm fairly certain Trump will get 330 million votes and will lose. Funny, not funny. But I just have a couple other quick articles to pull up again. Just like my comments on previous ones, I'm not going to read through them. They're over on Patreon, but this one here that is worth reading and watching what Tucker Carlson has to say. I'll play just a small piece of it.
But I watched CNN today, and they had the presidential debate, the U.S. presidential debate. And maybe some of you saw it. And if you did, well, it was amazing. It was amazing on every level. But what was especially amazing was afterward, they went to the panel of assembled Democratic operatives posing as journalists, and all of them were like shocked to discover that Joe Biden has dementia. Like, they couldn't believe it. What? Oh my gosh. He's non-compromised. No way. Are you serious? And I'm thinking to myself, what year is it? 2024-ish? Middle-aged people identify with that? Okay, 2024, people are saying. It was 2019 that I heard from a friend of mine who was friends with his sister, Val, that the family was very upset because Joe has dementia and he's running for president. And well, I said this on TV, by the way, at the time, and was denounced as a racist or something. I mean, everything in the United States, like that's just like the all-purpose term for shut up. Racist. It's like, I think he's white. Shut up, racist. Okay. Anyway, but his sister had told a friend of mine, like an actual friend of mine, one of my neighbors, that the family was upset and that his son sadly had passed away. By the way, not in Iraq fighting a war for freedom, but of cancer. I don't think he's aware of that. But sad. And that the family was convinced he needed to kind of get it out of his system by running for president. But of course, no one's going to like make Joe Biden the nominee because we had Pete Buttigieg for that. Who's now it's a joke. But at the time, they were like, people are going to love Pete Buttigieg. He's incompetent, but he's gay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember watching after the debate, and we changed amongst a few different networks, and back to the Mockingbird stuff. Every single one of them was saying the same thing. And we stopped on Van Jones for a minute on CNN, and absolutely flabbergasted that anybody would let President Biden with dementia go out on stage and get beat up like that by Donald Trump when we all knew it had been going on for years. And we're back to the same thing again, Jeff. How can you be so fucking stupid that you couldn't recognize that Joe Biden had dementia years ago? Like,
Van Jones will accidentally tell the truth every once in a while. So he's actually interesting to listen to, because sometimes he's like, oh, did I say that out loud? I was thinking it, but I'm not supposed to say it out loud. Well, you had Joe Scarborough, Morning Joe, who's just a total lunatic forever. Oh, Joe Biden is sharper than he's ever been. I talked to him last week. He's smarter now than when I was in the Congress back a million years ago. And how quickly he just rolled over after the debate. I mean, like within 48 hours of saying, Biden's going to mop the floor with Trump because he's so much smarter, sharper, to saying, yeah, this poor guy, how could they let him out there? And it's like, because you're one of the they who let him out there, you moron. But they would elect a ham sandwich if it would keep him in power.
Right. Probably somewhere around the same IQ level as Joe
They
Biden.
were mad that he had dementia. They were mad that people found out.
Yeah, correct. And so there's a recent article on American Thinker, and the headline is really good because it's the $1 million question. Biden's dementia. What do they know and when did they know it? And Biden's family, Obama, other people in the Democrats clearly knew that this was the case going back long before the election was stolen on his behalf. And that timeline is what makes this whole thing so important, in that they thought so little of us that they felt that they could put a dementia patient in the Oval Office and that we would accept it, miss it, not pick up on it. They truly think that we're retards, right? They think we're absolutely beyond stupid. And that's just flat out insulting. I mean, I'll never forget when somebody said something to Joe Biden and he turned around and he snapped at them. He's like, 81 million votes. And I'm thinking to myself, see, he doesn't know that they stole the election from him, and he's got dementia, and he's stupid enough to believe that he got 81 million votes.
Yeah.
With
Or he's
16%
stupid
of
enough
the
to
counties.
you believe that he got 81 million votes.
Right. But at the end of the day, just to reel it back in again, as far as the topic of tonight is concerned, we're back to big media, big tech doing whatever Big Brother wants them to do, that there's an element of our society that will buy into this bullshit no matter what. And it has to end. And I've already mentioned, like, Todd Callender and I are working on an episode next week where we have a list of laws that we feel need to be passed in this country to save America, regardless of what happens in any races. Okay. The only chance of getting those laws passed, though, will be to get Donald Trump back in power. But one of the ones at the top of the list is there have got to be penalties for being a news organization and willfully presenting bullshit lies, misrepresenting them as the truth. That stuff's got to end. That's what would you call it? The Ministry of Truth per, 1984, right?
Well, at least the Nazis were honest. They had a ministry of propaganda.
Right.
Give them that. They were straight up.
Exactly. So, I mean, let's move on to the next one, which is, I think, really puts a super fine point on this. And we're going to watch a couple videos here. But for starters, this is Donald Trump earlier on January the 6th. And this is one of the videos that was taken down off of Twitter virtually instantly because it went against Nancy Pelosi's plans to have this insurrection. So let's hear what he had to say earlier in the day on January the 6th.
And only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country. Our country.
So that was the first video that Jack Dorsey took down. And this is the more important second video. This video was literally taken down in a matter of seconds, was Donald Trump telling people to go home and be peaceful.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel, but go home and go home in peace.
So Jack Dorsey, after the fact, did a mea culpa, how he wishes he'd never taken that down. And I don't believe a word that the guy says at all. I mean, it was done at not the behest, but the actual order of Obama and his minions. Basically said, take that stuff off. And to this day, you will still hear people on the other side, as you know, the insurrection. There's no fucking insurrection. In insurrection, you have to have guns. And the only person shot and killed was Ashley Babbitt, for crying out loud. And, Michael Byrd should be, charged, tried, and convicted of murder for what happened to Ashley Babbitt. But my point is there is an instance of a narrative that was already put together in advance by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and these scumbags. And there's just a shit ton of video showing how produced things were on their end and following them through the tunnels. I've got a couple more videos to show of people who were there on J6 that were helping people, like the cops who were portrayed to be, no, they're beating the cops up, which was a total bullshit narrative as well. But again, this whole thing was planned and executed. And the only way they were able to pull it off was by having the mainstream media do exactly as they were told.
Sure. Twitter took that stuff down immediately because it didn't support their narrative. But, okay, so Twitter takes it down. ABC could have run with it. NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, any of them could have put it out there. And if you have the president of the United States talking about a riot that's going on basically right then, right there, that's newsworthy. But for them to just basically go, no, it was all, they were taking their marching orders from the DNC. And it says, we're not going to put anything out that is honest and could possibly make Trump look presidential or look sane. We want him. We have a story we have to push. And the reason they still won't do it to this day is they want, when he wins the election, they want to be able to come up with a reason not to seat him. They want to say, well, he was an insurrectionist, so we're not going to vote for him, and we're going to invoke the 14th Amendment, even though the Supreme Court's already shot that down. or they're going to try and woo, rhinos over to say, we can't have this guy in charge. He's, he's dangerous. But what's, and they say, we got to save democracy. Yeah, by ignoring the results of an election, that's saving democracy. And what they're going to end up doing, if they pull it off, they're going to start a civil war, because there are a lot of people who are going to go, not again. You did it last time, you got away with it. We're not going to put up with it this time.
So I'm working on a flow chart with Todd Callender on another project where we're trying to map out all of the potential things that could happen between now and January the 6th. And we reviewed a handful of them last night. I'll just really quickly give somewhat of a recap. So by my opinion, and Todd agrees with me, is that the powers that be will continue to try and kill Donald Trump. And that's not going to end anytime soon. I'm of the opinion that they've come to the realization that this election is going to be too big to rig, and they're probably going to have to concede that Donald Trump won the election and gets awarded the electoral college votes, right? But they're not. That doesn't mean they're going to let him back in power, because I think at that point in time, actually, let me back up a bit. So we just apprehended a terrorist from Afghanistan who reportedly had plans to engage in terrorist activities on November the 5th and disrupt our elections. That's possible. Maybe there's martial law. Maybe this is try and suspend the election, whatever, because I really do believe that Obama and the rest of them are smart enough to realize that Donald Trump will win in an absolutely massive landslide. And they would have to cheat way beyond 100% voter turnout to overcome the numbers that he's going to generate. But what happens after that? Well, they will try and incarcerate him. And while he's incarcerated, they potentially, Epstein him. They potentially use the 14th Amendment to disqualify him. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that there's no terrorist attacks on November 5th, and Donald Trump gets the majority of the votes, and they don't manage to assassinate him, and they don't manage to incarcerate him, and they don't manage to eliminate him vis-a-vis the 14th Amendment. On January the 6th, they have already told us, Jamie Raskin, for example, that they will not certify the election results and that they will need to activate the military because us deranged Trump voters are going to be a threat to them. And I'm not making any physical threats. I'm flat out stating that if we get to January the 6th and they do not certify him as the winner, it's a given. All hell will break loose. And I think Obama wants all hell to break loose because I think he feels it's his one chance to knock America down to the point that we can usher in this new world order, one world government, whatever the case may be. There is nothing that looks good out of all this. And I do not see them saying, oh, Donald Trump won fair and square, we're going to reinstate him as the president of the United States and turn power back over to him. I don't see it happening. The only way it happens is civil war, and that's brutal.
Yeah, if they're going to assassinate him, they kind of do it in the next couple of weeks, because once the election's over, it's going to be harder to get at him because he's not going to be out campaigning. I mean, every time they took a shot at him, he was either campaigning. Well, he may play golf, but I would assume he's going to be hunkered down with his transition team and picking people and deciding who he's going to hire and who he's going to fire. And I hope the list of who he's going to fire is very, very long and noteworthy. But if they say, okay, we're not going to vote certify, they got to have a majority in the House to do that. And they would have to, swing the rhinos over to them. And I think it's going to be the new House, not the old House, that votes. And if Trump wins, and Trump wins in a landslide, I think you're going to see the House go much stronger to the Republicans. So it's going to take a lot of rhinos. You're going to have to convince a lot of rhinos to vote against certification. And any rhino who does that is signing his political death warrant, because they will never get elected ever again. They wouldn't get elected dog catcher if they do that, because people are going to say, dude, you stole my votes. We had 80 million people voted for Trump, and you decided in your infinite wisdom to negate that. Screw you. I would not want to be one of those guys at all.
Yeah, I agree with Mark here, though, is that they'll offer them a sum of money and some position of power. They'll entice them to do it. two
Well-
different sides of the same coin, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, say they don't certify him, and they got to pick a candidate. They got to pick a president. Who are they going to pick? Because I don't think even the rhinos are going to want Kamala Harris in there. The Democrats may throw her in there. So are they going to try and pick some middle of the road, a Haley, Nikki Haley type that the Democrats can back, and you may get enough Republicans to back? And then you want to talk about an illegitimate president. Oh man.
I personally think that they will place Kamala in power because she's an easy manipulated and controlled puppet. And you heard from her directly and Tim Walz directly. What would you do different that Joe Biden did over the past years? I wouldn't do anything different. They flat out tell you what their intentions are. And at the end of the day, all it would be Obama's fourth term. So yeah. I think that they would stick with her and put her in there. But I've got a couple other videos I want to share here related to Donald Trump and January the 6th and otherwise. So this one here, this video shows Trump supporters defending the cops. And, of course, the narrative from the bad guys is that all of the MAGA people that were there did nothing but attack the cops. And that's just not true. So I'm not sure if these are actually cops or munchkins or what they are, but like this one here appears to be a good 1.5 feet shorter than that guy there. I don't know.
You're some of their guys and maybe female officers as well.
You know what they are?
They're all part of the DEI. So
my bad, my slip. They're clearly DEI hires.
Yeah.
So the guy who's yelling, just in case anybody can't hear it clearly, is threatening to kill those cops. And then you've got good guys stepping in to say, no, you won't. You'll have to go through this. So the guy in the red hat, the guy in the red shirt are essentially keeping space between the bad guys and the cops. So, of course, nobody would want, that to be seen. But let's listen to this young man here. This is actually a really good video. It's 2.5 minutes long, a little bit over that. It's worth listening to the whole thing. He's well-spoken and he makes some great points.
Trump. This is merely just calling out the lies that are bluntly told in front of our faces. I urge you all to think for yourself and look up the news for yourself. I don't care if you vote for Trump or Kamala, as long as you know why you are voting for them. In this video, we're going to be debunking the most common lies that are told about Donald Trump, because instead of the media telling you the lies that Donald Trump is making, the media is making the lies about Donald Trump. And again, this isn't to say that he's never lied before, but it just goes back to how the media is coming up with lies about him instead of just telling the people what he's actually saying and giving the proper context. If you like this kind of content, commentary, reaction, and you like getting to the truth of the matter, be sure to subscribe. It helps the channel grow a ton. Without further ado, let's dive right into this. Find people on both sides.
Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side.
This is something that they didn't fact check, despite fact checking Trump, which I'm all for. If you're going to fact check, that's fine. I'm all for the truth, but at least be consistent. Because according to a common fact checking site, Snopes, no, Trump did not call neo-Nazis and white supremacists very fine people. That's the actual truth. Joe Biden, Kamala, everybody keeps regurgitating this one headline. He said there are fine people on both sides. There is far more context to what he said. His sentence was cut off and the truth was just never out there. So for those of you who have never seen the actual footage, let's hear what he actually said.
Changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists,
because they should be condemned totally.
I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis or the white supremacists, white nationalists. They should be condemned completely. That is what he said in that same clip. But like, if I let it keep
But
playing,
you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats.
he called it out for what it is. He said there were very bad people on the right that need to be condemned. The white nationalists and the claims of all them people, he said that's stupid. That needs to be condemned. And he also said the Antifa and the people dressed in all black, they need to be condemned too. There were fine people on the right side that just wanted to maintain our nation's history and have these statues, and it's whatever. There were fine people on the left who said, I want the statue down. It's hurtful to my ancestors. Regardless, there were fine people on both sides, but it's clear with the full context. Trump never said that the Klansmen and the white nationalists were very fine people. He said.
So a couple other just quick things here. Left-wing Snopes, have weighed in and basically said that Donald Trump did not say that these neo-Nazis were very fine people. And even after this came out, shit for brains Joe Biden and his supporters continued to say that he said these things with regards to neo-Nazis. And then this is not related to the fine people hoax, but I want to end the stuff on Donald Trump right here. And I've got more to say as far as JB Pritzer's comments here. So
during COVID, we supported small businesses and jobs. And Donald told us to inject bleach.
So we'll go back to the January 6th stuff and the fine people hoax in a second. I just wanted that one last example of the bad guys making up these bullshit false stories. So what Trump said was that chlorine dioxide can be used to nuke a lot of different ailments, okay? And I can tell you for a fact, I'll just tell you the background of this. Todd Callender was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 14. At the age of 40, he weighed 109 pounds, and his oncologist said, you have less than 4 weeks to live. So his doctor had taken him to the oncologist, 109 pounds, so 6 feet tall, 109 pounds, less than 4 weeks to live. His doctor puts him in the car and starts heading towards Mexico. And Todd's like, what are you doing? Where are we going? He said, I'm taking you to Mexico to take a treatment there that is based on chlorine dioxide. So I hate the way that chemical scientists have all these similar names and they screw people up. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, yeah, my doctor put me on steroids, and they're on prednisone. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's a corticosteroid. It's not an anabolic steroid, but they want to say, yeah, my doctor put me on steroids, right? It's the same thing with chlorine dioxide. Chlorine dioxide shares nothing in common with chlorine bleach, okay? And here's the deal, and I've got to be careful what I say because we're sending this out to YouTube, but I can tell you right now that there is somebody in the comment section that I'm looking at right now that Todd Callender was kind enough to send a care package to, and that person did what Todd's instructions were with that care package and went for his checkup, and they said, the cancer's done. It's gone. We don't know how, but you're cured. And we don't have to do surgery on you. Your body will just absorb this dead tumor. And there's multiple stories like that. So when a fat ass piece of shit like Pritzker gets up there and thinks he's smarter than Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump is telling you to inject chlorine bleach in your arms, total, absolute fucking bullshit lie. And we saw what that young black guy had to say, and I chose that guy's take on things for a very specific reason. If I had to guess, he's probably gay, he's a minority, and he's black, and he's not being subject to the Democrats' programming to say Donald Trump is the Antichrist. That young man from a different group than, say, you and I are a part of, not a white male, not a white heterosexual male, clearly intelligent and was able to see through the bullshit, which is back to the same thing again. Why aren't people smart enough to see this through this crap? So before we move on to the next part, is there anything you want to say with regards to all this shit that they've tried to throw at Donald Trump and how he's the Teflon Don and it just doesn't stick in the long run?
They're still doing this whole Project 2025 nonsense. Oh, that's not Trump's agenda. It never has been. He even said, never even read the thing. But they keep repeating it over and over and over, and people keep believing it because they want to. If it can, they have a mindset, and it's one of those, don't confuse me with facts. I've already made up my mind. And people like that are really, really hard to reach because they're not critical thinkers. They're not skeptics. They don't do their own research because it's easier. I have a friend and a neighbor, love her to death, but she gets her news from The View. And it's like, oh my God, a bunch of washed up old actresses and comedians. And that's your news source. Well, okay, not much I can do with that.
Yeah. Not much I can say to that either, because it's so ridiculous that if somebody's that far gone, there's probably no hope. There's no saving them.
And there's people in Chicago. I vote Democrat because I've always voted Democrat. My parents voted Democrat. My grandfather voted Democrat. They don't even think about voting Republican.
Right.
But oh well.
So let me share one last story here. So this one's with regards to the 60 Minutes interview with Kamala, where what they originally released, of course, she's a babbling fool. So they took it down. They put up another version that they'd edited to make her answer sound more eloquent and intelligent. And then they copped to it and they admitted it. And there's now been formal complaints filed with the FCC to have this looked into. This is a prime example of what I'm getting at with the project that Todd and I are working on. Because here's the thing, Todd Callender is a very notorious federal level attorney. He's argued cases in front of SCOTUS. He carries weight. He's the CEO of a global insurance company along the lines of Berkshire Hathaway, and he owns all these crazy projects. The guy has clout behind him. And so the project that we're working on, and can't wait to have you on that episode, Jeff, because I know you'll have a lot of constructive criticism, is Todd will take what we put together, mostly him. I'm just the Forrest Gump. He's the smart guy. But we'll be able to take that to Trump's people and say, look, if and when you get back into power, you have got to work with Congress on getting these laws passed so that the next Joe Biden can't undo all of your progress with a stroke of the pen over executive orders and executive memorandums. And one of those laws will specifically be the truth in broadcasting stuff, resurrected to the point where, again, if you're 60 Minutes, you're CBS, and you knowingly edit and broadcast this stuff that is complete fabricated bullshit, 3 strikes, you're out. You lose your broadcast license, you're done. And it has to be that way. So let me play this video from 60 Minutes, and then I'll get you to comment on this next, Jeff.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
So that answer that they spliced in there was her answer to the Ukraine-Russia conflict. But they presented it as if that was her answer with regards to the conflict in the Middle East. That has got, I'm a libertarian, lowercase l. I think that we should get rid of all the laws, go back to the 10 Commandments, call it a day. But in reality, that's not going to happen. But what I would like to see is some laws that enforce getting rid of this insanity. You cannot have people out there broadcasting bullshit like that and people spooning it up and eating it up, believing in it. It's wrong.
What's so funny is CBS in one breath says we did not put in any deceitful edits, and then the next breath says, but we did edit it. And then when you look at it, oh yeah, by the way, what was the initial and what was the final weren't even answers to the same question. So how can that not be deceitful? It's like, are you freaking kidding me? It's like that's when it's insulting. It's like, do you really think I am so stupid that I'm not going to look at the first sentence you say and then compare it to the second sentence you say and say, wait a minute, these two don't jive? But that's exactly what they did. It's like a woman catching her husband in bed and saying, it's not what you think. I'm just having sex with this other woman. And it's like, well, that's exactly what I think it is. Yeah, but it's not really an affair because, it's not a serious relationship. She's just a hooker. Oh, that makes it all better. It's just unbelievable how stupid they think we are.
So, and here's an example. Elevator Man, one of our most loyal followers, he stays on top of everything, and he's not a dumb redneck, but I get what he's saying. I mean, people automatically assume if you're from the South that, that they're more intelligent, and that's just not the case. But he raises a valid point. He's like me and the people I hang out with. We're just average, everyday Americans. I'm a college dropout. I don't have any fancy degrees. I don't have any fancy title or anything. I'm on a mission to try and spread the truth, to dispatch the truth as best as we can to try and save the republic. And if I can see through it and our buddy Elevator Man can see through it and the rest of these people can see through it, I promise this last time I'm going to say it tonight, but I just don't get how people could be so damn gullible to believe this bullshit. So I will get off of that soapbox. Go ahead, Jeff.
I want to make one comment about Elevator Man. He is not a dumb redneck because I'm a dumb redneck and he's never at the meetings.
That's good. Right on. I like it. So we're at the portion of this episode where we've got some actionable things, right? So for those people who are new to Survival Dispatch News, and for those people who haven't watched the end of our episodes, right from the get-go when I started Survival Dispatch News, I wanted to make sure that we were different than most podcasts in that a lot of podcasts do a great job reporting whatever the thing is. They do a great job editorializing whatever the thing is. But then you read the comments and people are like, well, all I see is a bunch of talking heads, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing that I can do that would make a difference. Well, that's the difference at Survival Dispatch News. I've insisted from the get-go that we offer things that people can actually do to have a positive impact on whatever this thing is that we're discussing. And right now we're discussing, bald-faced lies made on the part of big media, big tech, and as it relates to censorship and shaping and influencing our elections and shaping public policy, et cetera, et cetera. So number one, and I'm going to go through this list, Jeff, and then you can critique it and you can add to it as you see fit. But number one, share Survival Dispatch News with your circle and other channels that are truth tellers as well. I believe that people like Survival Dispatch News, obviously I'm biased towards us, but I believe we're doing a better job than the mainstream media is getting the truth out there. And it's one of the reasons. Somebody made a comment, Jeff, on one of our videos last night, and they're like, man, you got 400,000 subscribers and 4,000 views. That's bullshit. We know that we're being suppressed. And the only way to get around being suppressed is I'm not saying it will get around at 100%, but if people like our videos, share our videos, comment on our videos, and watch our entire videos, it's much more likely that we can break free of that vicious circle of the algorithm. But even if none of that stuff happens and you just share our content with your circle, there's more people now that are going to have access to the truth. Here's one of the things I put together, Jeff. I don't know if you agree with it or not, but I personally think that if you read a story or watch a video on mainstream media that is overly positive or overly negative in the other direction, it's probably bullshit. And that should be your first sign that I should probably investigate this a little bit further, because if they're going that far to the extremes, it probably doesn't pass the sniff test. The next one would be push back on people in your circle who've drank the Kool-Aid at the end of the day. You know what? If you have people in your circle that you've agreed to disagree with and you still have a friendship, that's a good thing to a certain extent. If they're going to believe in outright bullshit lies, they're probably not deserving to be that close in your circle. Maybe the periphery, but not in the middle, because we don't necessarily attract what we want. We attract what we are. And if you want solid people in your inner circle, you have to share the same values and beliefs. If you don't, and you look at the lens through or the world through vastly different lenses, highly unlikely that that's a relationship that'll last in the long run. So another example pushing back is weigh in on community notes on X. I love community notes. They've done such a great job of derailing the fact checkers. With that being said, we unveiled a group last night that has 17,000 Democrats out there trying to leave bullshit community notes on truth tellers. So we got to fight back against that. Report bullshit news on social media sites. If enough people do it, we will hopefully have an impact. Be skeptical and investigate the source. There's a Jeff MD original there. Try to confirm the facts that the source is confirming. Don't believe it out of hand. Stop relying on lying sons of bitches like Google and MSN. If you're searching on a search engine and you type in, can men get pregnant? And it says yes, you are using a search engine that's going to turn your brain to shit. And you cannot believe anything that's being put out there by that search engine. Use yandex.com, use Brave Search, use anything but a search engine that tells you that men can get pregnant. And another thing that's handy and that you need to add to your arsenal these days, and there are multiple websites like aiornot.com, but if you think something doesn't pass the sniff test, go drop it on a website that checks to see if something's AI generated. Pretty good at coming back and saying, yeah, this was generated by AI. It's complete bullshit. You can do it with images. You can do it with written text, so on and so forth. aiornot.com. The only reason I mention it is because it's a catchy domain name. It's one of the first ones that came out there. So, Jeff, your thoughts on those action items that we just went through?
Well, yeah, I agree with all of them. And I'll say, do your own research. If there's a story that's out there, it comes out and it's either too good to be true or too horrible to be true, do your own research. Look at who's reporting it. Find out, are they listing their sources? And then look at those sources. So many times they say, according to an anonymous source. Well, that's a circular file right there, because if you're not willing to name your source, unless it's like some super duper national security issue, why not? Do your own research. And if you have someone, a reporter, a TV station, a newspaper, a website that has repeatedly lied to you, why are you still going there? Why are you wasting your time going to MSNBC when they have for years told you that the Hunter Biden laptop was a hoax, or that Trump was a Soviet or a Russian agent? Soviet, I'm showing my age. When people lie to you, don't listen to them anymore. That's what turned me away from the whole climate change thing. Is like, you keep telling me that New York's going to be underwater and Florida's going to, that there's going to be waves in downtown Orlando. Yet none of that's ever happened. So, yeah, I just kind of once they've, it's one of those fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. I mean, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. If I keep listening to people who lie to me and thinking they're not, I'm the idiot. So don't do it.
Yeah, agreed. Well said. So a couple things just to wrap up here. Number one, I had a quick look at my inbox. I see a whole bunch of emails from people who've signed up for Signal. And so give me a little bit of time, but I'll have all y'all, we'll get your invites tonight to be part of the Signal group, which is, I see when I look down at my icons here in my doc that there's been a whole bunch of stuff being posted in the Signal group while we've been on here live. Patreon.com/survival dispatch, $9.99. Get behind the scenes info, essentials guide, be part of our Signal group. If you don't want to spend the money, about 50% of the content that we put up on Patreon is accessible for free accounts as well. Little bit off on traffic tonight, not the best numbers when I'm adding everything up in my head, maybe peak somewhere around 500 combined across all the platforms. Last Thursday we were well over 1,000. I think we peaked about 1,200. Do me a favor, please mash the thumbs up button before you leave, and that just leaves the conflicted question of the day. So Nelson had survived several encounters with death, largely due to the group of people he belonged to. They were few in number, but loyal friends who were well organized. Supplies were extremely low, but they were getting by. While moving around with his group, Nelson ran into an old fiance. She had someone with her, and both of them wanted to join Nelson's group. Nelson said this was a group decision. If you were in Nelson's group, would you be willing to add people who brought little to the table into your group? Why or why not? I'll let you take the first stab at it, Jeff.
Well, the first thing I want to find out is, was their breakup bad? You know, if it was ugly, I may not want, and I get along with Nelson, I may not want her in the group.
Yeah.
Or if he broke up with her because she was nuts. As far as bringing people into the group, there's strength in numbers, and people who may not seem to be very utile can be trained to do good things. They can forage for food. They can stand a post at night on guard duty, something like that. So, and Nelson knows her, and if he's willing to take his ex into the group, then he must be fairly comfortable with her. I know a lot of exes I would never let into the group, but that's just me.
Yeah, amen to that for sure. So good points on your part. HTG asks, how long ago did they break up? That's the thing with the conflicted questions, is you don't have all that extra context, right?
Yep.
So if they didn't part under bad terms, chances are they could contribute something to the group. Like you said, Jeff, they may already have a certain skill, or they may have certain connections that would be useful for our group. And if they don't, they can probably be educated, trained to do something beneficial to the group. My gut has a really hard time with this hardline prospect of saying, fuck you, go fuck yourself to people in a bad situation. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to say that thing. I want to find a way to solve this problem without, shitting on somebody like that. And we've discussed, there's multiple layers of SHTF. Doesn't matter how bad that SHTF situation is. I don't want to be the guy who dooms somebody to failure. It's just
if they refuse to work or refuse to contribute in any way, they just sit on their ass and expect me to feed them bonbons. Just kick them out then.
I would probably look at this in the same way that I've looked at some hires over the years. So I've had some real go-getters come to me looking for a job over the years when there was no position open. I wasn't advertising to hire somebody, but they had some compelling argument, and I've made them a deal. I'm saying, okay, listen, let's do this for 90 days. And at 90 days, we're going to sit down, reload on where we are. And if you've moved the needle and made a contribution to my company, then we'll go from there. And I think I might approach something like this in a similar vein to say, y'all can do a 90-day tryout. And if at the end of the 90 days, everything's going well, and the group decides that you're a good addition, then we'll make it permanent at that point in time and see how it goes from there. Again, we lack context with a lot of these conflict questions. So that is all I've got, Jeff. Tomorrow night's topic to be determined. There are certain topics like this one that I think you can discuss at any particular point in time because it's that important. I refer to them as timeless topics. But most of the time we try and find something at the top of the news cycle because we know it's top of mind. And if it's top of mind, then we know people are interested in the discussion. So we shall see what's at the top of the news cycle tomorrow morning before we choose tomorrow evening's topic. We'll have a group back again tomorrow night for a live discussion. Other than that, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And God bless America.